Hello all and peace be with you. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome back to those of you who have watched before, and welcome to you if this is your first time seeing a video from this series. We're going over creed, aqidah in Arabic, creed, using this book here. I know it's backwards. It's called the Establishment of Clear Exposition, a commentary on Al-Hadis, the fundamentals of the religion, by the Imam Rassi Society. It's in the English language. I recommend you get it. If you want reasons why, well, listen to why in the previous videos and in this video that you're about to see right now. So anyway, welcome to you, all of you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. So last we spoke, we talked about interpreting narrations. Can the narrations be interpreted? Absolutely, yes. The answer is yes. Can the Quranic verses be interpreted? Absolutely. The answer is yes. So we talked about how Masruq, I believe he was a tabi'i, if not, he was a sahabi, and he asked Aisha. And we were using Sunni texts to justify that God is not seen, he has no physical body, and that ta'wil, interpretation, is permitted and is utilized not only by the Zaydiyah or the Mu'tazila or others who interpret. It's also used by Sunni scholars themselves, Al-Bukhari being one of them. So, as well as the tabi'een and sahaba like Zayd ibn Aslam, and tabi'een like Sa'id ibn Jubair. Sahaba meaning companion of the Prophet, tabi'een meaning those who followed the companions but never got a chance to meet the Prophet. Peace and blessings be upon him and upon his progeny and upon all of his followers, from his companions to others. So what happens is, when we say interpretation, we don't mean translation, just simple translation from one language to another. We mean interpreting, meaning what does this verse really mean? Does it mean the way it appears apparently? Or does it mean something else? Linguistically, meaning this verse does not mean what we think it to mean. Meaning apparently it says that everything will perish. Now this is not word for word. It may be, but in the Quran it says that everything will perish except his face, God's face. Does that literally mean that God has a face, or does it mean that everything will perish except his dominion? That's what the book says. If I'm not mistaken, Imam al-Hadi said that everything except his face means his dominion. I believe that the interpretation could be that, no problem with that interpretation, but also all will be gone except him. Everything will perish except Allah, except God. So this is what we mean when we say interpretation, ta'wil. Last we spoke, we were using a text within it, a text within the text, a source within this source, by who I believe was a Zaydi scholar, and his name was Sayyid Abdullah bin Hussein bin Muhammad al-Kibsi ad-Daylami. In his treatise As-Sayf al-Maslul al-Qata' or al-Qata' or al-Qata', it's transliterated into English, لشبهات المخذول. Al-Qata' or al-Qata', I think it's al-Qata', لشبهات المخذول. In it, he mentions different people who are respected by Ahl Sunnah, as well as others. Others respect them, not just Ahl Sunnah, who used interpretation. So he mentions Sa'id ibn Jubair. He mentions Al-Bukhari. He mentions Zayd ibn Aslam. He mentions Yeah, Bukhari was the one we left off at, Bukhari's interpretations. So he mentions these people who used interpretation. They used ta'wil. So those who deny ta'wil, like the Salafis and others, the Salaf, the early Muslims, there were those of them who did not deny ta'wil. And it's more than likely that many of them did not deny ta'wil, interpreting the verses. You cannot escape ta'wil. You have to watch the first part of this series, of this particular part of the discussion. You have to watch the first part of this discussion in order to see that the first or second, I believe it was the first, that one cannot escape interpretation. You're going to be led to interpret. I believe it might have been the second, actually. Sorry for forgetting. So that's where we left off. We left off in using this scholar's book. May God's blessings be upon him and may peace be upon him. So we left off there. Now let's continue and see what else is there to be said using based on what the Sunni scholars and perhaps Sahaba and Tabi'een had to say about this matter, about interpretation. What was the case? Let's begin. Before anything, we begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify him as he ought to be praised and glorified. So there are also examples of interpretation in the hadiths, in the narrations. Sayyid Abdullah continues by quoting examples of interpretation in the recorded statements of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his progeny. Peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny. An-Nawawi, Imam An-Nawawi, the Shafi'i scholar who was an Ash'ari, An-Nawawi said, he, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, said that God, the Almighty, is not one-eyed, a'war. He's not one-eyed. An-Nawawi said that he, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, meaning the Prophet, said that God, the Prophet said that God, the Almighty, is not one-eyed, a'war. He's not a'war, which means that God is away from the designations of imperfections and away from all deficiencies. The Antichrist, ad-Dajjal, is the creation of God that has a deficient form. It's believed that the Antichrist, I believe, I think there was a division between Muslims in their belief in the Antichrist. I believe the majority believe in him, but there are some who did not. I think. In any case, he's the Antichrist. Ad-Dajjal. He said, the Antichrist is the creation of God that has a deficient form. It said that the Antichrist will have one eye. At least one eye that functions. The other one will not, if I'm not mistaken. An-Nawawi also said in Sharh Muslim. What's Sharh Muslim? That's his commentary on Sahih Muslim, the book Sahih Muslim. And now this is in Sharh Sahih Muslim. So now we're using evidence. As I mentioned, evidence is coming from other texts, not limited to the Zaydis, but texts that are respected and read by non-Zaydis and people who do not subscribe to what they call the Sunni school of thought. And Nawawi also said in Sharh Muslim, he, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, meaning the Prophet, said, the supplicant is not eliminated while God laughs. There might be a narration saying the supplicant, the one who asks God for something, that's what is implied by supplicant. Because you make supplication, meaning you call on God for something. The supplicant is not eliminated while God laughs. The scholars say that God's laughing, this laughing represents his pleasure with the actions of his slave, an indication of his love towards something, or the symbol of his blessings on someone. So he interpreted that laughing is not literal. He said it's a symbol. It's symbolic, referring to God's pleasure towards something, or the symbol of his blessings on someone. Regarding God's hands, it is interpreted to mean his power. It is indicated by hands because our actions are performed by the hands, and our discourses by our understanding. Our conversations, if I'm not mistaken, discourses by our understanding. Regarding the statements, the fair people, it says al-maqisitin. I think it's al-muqasitin. I could be wrong. The fair people are with God on the pulpits of light and are at the right hand of the most merciful, meaning of God. At the right hand of the most merciful, and both of his hands are right hands. Ibn Arifah said both of his hands are right hands is a metaphor and does not convey the idea of a right limb. The Salafis believe both of God's hands are right hands. Both of God's hands, this is a hand, okay? Whether it has 2 fingers or 1 or 3 or 5, it will always be a right hand. It will always be a right hand. It will always be a hand. On your side, it's on the right. but in any case, this is always going to be a right hand. But they believe that both of them are right hands. They tell you that God is a body unlike other bodies, and then they say that God has 2 right hands. They give you all these descriptions of a humanly body, and then they tell you that he's not like other bodies. What stupidity is this? When will people when will people start saying these people are disbelievers, they're rejectors? Like the old scholars used to say, not just Zaydi or Mu'tazili, or at least one Mu'tazili said that, but when will people say that these are not Muslims? You cross so many red lines of fire when you say that. That God has a physical body and he has 2 right hands and he doesn't have a nose and he has 2 eyes and he smiles and he sits on a throne literally and he fills the throne. What are you talking about? I believe we're still in what An-Nawawi is saying. An-Nawawi said, the believer being close to his Lord on the day of judgment denotes attaining nobility and goodness. It does not denote distance because he is above the attribute of distance. God is above the attribute of distance. It doesn't mean that you're close to him in proximity. Like I'm close to this book. No. It means that in nobility and goodness. We mentioned this the other day about when we said that, you are near to me and you are near to me, meaning that, you're someone of high esteem. I have a lot of respect for you. But if someone was a mile away and you say, you're near me, you're close to me, that's not word for word what we said last time. But let's just say someone is a mile away and you tell them over the phone or by text, you're close to me, you're someone that, you're near me. And he says, I'm a mile away. You say, no, that's not what I meant. I meant that you're near me and that I hold you in high esteem. There's something called a figure of speech. And Nawawi said the believer being close to his Lord on the day of judgment denotes attaining nobility and goodness. It does not denote distance because he is above the attribute of distance. Al-Qastalani said, anger is something that enters the hearts of creatures. However, it is unbecoming of the exalted Creator, Al-Bari Ta'ala, the exalted Creator, because this implies that something affects the exalted and he is altered by effects and circumstances. So this anger, how we interpret it, is not to be literal anger the way we feel anger. Because it implies that something affects God. And that he is altered by effects and circumstances, which is not the case. This is where people like the Christians go wrong. Maybe the Salafis too, I'm not sure when it comes to this, but the Christians go wrong when it comes to this. Maybe the Jews as well. That God changes moods. How these people get away with doing things like this, I have no idea. I don't know. Because Sunni scholars will even accept them as Muslims. How can you accept them as Muslims? Whoever accepts such people as Muslims, knowing what they believe in, is an idiot. I don't care which scholar he is. I don't care if he's from Al-Azhar. I don't care if he's from the moon. I don't care where he's from. You're an idiot. And a liar. And a deceiver. Someone insults your Lord and you just take it? There's something called ghira. Ghira is a kind of protective jealousy. You know how, like, if you're a man, and if you're a woman, women have it too. If you're a man or a woman, and you have a husband or a wife, and when someone looks at that husband or wife, you have this sense of jealousy, protective jealousy. You don't want other men to look at your woman, and you don't want other women looking at your man. Or if you have a sister or a daughter, mother, both mom and dad don't want people looking at her the wrong way, right? That's called ghira. It's like a protective jealousy. So if we have ghira over these people in our lives, over our women, which you can have over other things too, by the way, not just women, but this is an example. How can you not have ghira over your Lord? You don't get a burning feeling when someone insults your Lord in front of your face? You don't burn inside? Nothing wrong with burning inside. That should be the reaction. You don't refute the person? You're supposed to refute him. You can't just let him get away with such a thing. But how many people tell you, they follow all these crazy idiot scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah. If you want to quote Ibn Taymiyyah, mention that you don't follow Ibn Taymiyyah's way. You want to quote him on something that he said, quote him. But don't mention him in a way that you like, that you respect him, if you don't follow his way. Because if you don't do that, then you're like him. May God resurrect you with him. With Ibn Taymiyyah and with Ibn al-Qayyim and with Ibn Uthaymeen and with Ibn Baz and with Salih Fawzan and Al-Albani and all of this rubbish, all of these apes. May God resurrect you with them. With people who say foul things about God and then go telling other people that they commit shirk and bid'ah, innovation. Shirk meaning polytheism. They go around telling people. They wear a picnic blanket on their head without any iqal, the black ring. They don't wear the iqal. I don't know why, whatever the case may be. They wear that. There's nothing wrong with wearing that thing. If you want to wear it, that's fine. I see it as an Arab nationalist thing. Whatever the case may be, they wear that on their. I don't say that it's haram. I didn't say it's haram. I just say I'm just saying what I think of it. That's it. You wear the picnic blanket heads. Go around telling people this and that, this and that. What's allowed, what's not allowed. Nobody tells them to shut up. Because they're the reason why the ummah is destroyed. They've misled it. But Sammy, they teach people, with hadith, they teach them to follow. Yeah, but in a way they're poisoning them as well, because they did not teach them to think. They forbade them from thinking, in fact. They forbade them from thinking. So rather than relieving one of his anxiety, they increased the anxiety. Because they do give rules of fiqh, jurisprudence, from different views. One view which could ease the life of one. But the first, by default, they give the people the rule that's difficult. Then when the person has a waswasa, OCD, then they give him another person's madhab. You How many times do people say, oh, this is haram, and this is bid'ah, and this is I don't know what, and blah, 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 all this stuff. Shirk, and they just have this extremism that they use the hadith to defend, but has no, they don't analyze anything. As if the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, himself wrote the hadith. As if there was no political involvement. Nobody changed the hadith. The chain is just authentic, and that's that, and we take from it, and that's it. That's where the Mu'tazila knock these people out. But Sami, they don't exist. They don't exist not because they were weak. They don't exist because of political circumstances. That's why. If I ask you right now, why is so much of the world Christian and Catholic? Are you going to tell me because it's the most chosen religion? It's because of conquest. Conquest is what brought Catholicism to Latin America. Conquest is what brought Catholicism to the Philippines. Conquest. The same way English is what reached Africa through the English, through the British. It's in the name. What do you think? It just sprung out of the ground? That's what the oil and the resources, the gold and the resources that those colonizers wanted. That's what came from the ground. But those people left their mark on those territories that they colonized. Among them is religion, missionaries. That's why the majority is Sunni or whatever. It's all about politics. Who had the money and who had the sharpest sword, not who had the most faith. Sixth, it is also evident that some of the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, were said to exercise proper interpretations, and others would deviate with their interpretations. This is evident from a narration narrated in Al-Mustadrak of Imam Al-Hakim. Al-Hakim was Al-Hakim Al-Nisaburi or Al-Naysaburi, who was the commentator of Al-Bukhari, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, he wrote a commentary of either of both Bukhari and Muslim in one book, Al-Mustadrak, or on Sahih Muslim. If I'm not mistaken, it wasn't on Al-Bukhari. It's a famous book, Al-Mustadrak. Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. The Mustadrak of the two Sahihs, the two authentic books. They're not authentic 100%. Bukhari and Muslim. It was written by Imam al-Hakim, Sunni scholar, on the authority of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri. Again, this is evident from a narration narrated in Al-Mustadrak of Imam al-Hakim on the authority of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, one of the companions, peace be upon him, who said, "We were with the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, and his progeny, and he tore his sandal. He placed it in front of Ali to repair it. He walked around a little and said, 'Among you there is one who will fight for the interpretation, ta'wil, interpretation of the Quran, just as I fought for its revelation.' Some people began looking around. Among them Abu Bakr and Umar, may Allah be pleased with them. Abu Bakr said, 'Am I the one?' He replied, 'No.' The Prophet said, 'No.' Umar asked, 'Am I the one?' He replied, 'No. But it is the one repairing the sandal,' meaning Ali. And it says here, meaning Ali. We rejoiced at that. No one lifted their heads except that they heard that from the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny. This is found in Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain by Al-Hakim Al-Naysaburi. He was not a Shi'i. Don't say that. He was a Shi'i. He must have been a Shi'i. He was not a Shi'i. Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. Al-Hakim, A-L space H-A-K-I-M. Look him up. Some of you might be saying, why is he explaining all this stuff? Because not everyone is at the same level of understanding. That's why. I want this video and these videos to be as detailed as I can make them within the energy level that I have and within my capacity. That's why. Imam al-Hakim stated, this hadith, this narration is authentic based upon the criteria of al-Bukhari and Muslim, meaning based upon the criteria that Bukhari, Imams al-Bukhari and Muslim base their authenticity on. So when al-Bukhari or Muslim write a narration, they include certain people and they exclude certain people. So what happens is they include certain narrations and exclude certain narrations. Why? Because of the chains of one of the reasons is because of the chain. Who's in the chain? Oh, this person, I don't accept him as authentic. So they leave him out. But this narration is authentic according to them, according to Bukhari and Muslim, although they didn't relate it. So it was authentic according to them, but they did not relate it in their text. Why? I don't know. But Imam al-Hakim said that. Well, he's not going to lie to you about that. This is the narration. This is what he narrated. I'm not saying he literally stated this and I heard him with my own 2 ears. I'm saying that this is what's found in his text. And he's a reputable scholar. He said this narration is authentic, although they didn't relate it. Meaning that he had some source where he found that they were authentic. Why Bukhari and Muslim didn't narrate it? I don't know. Maybe politics. Because maybe, you don't know. Maybe if we say Ali, they're going to think we're Shia. And if they think we're Shia, they're going to punish us. You don't know. You have to understand history. If you don't study history, you're going to be in a problem. Study it as much as you can. If you don't study history, you're going to be in problems. I'm serious. If you don't study history, you don't know many things. You don't know the why. If you don't know the why, then what's the point of anything? You have to know, you have to understand, you have to have an understanding to the context of things. It's okay for you to have an opinion, but you must understand why you have that opinion. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haythami, Ibn Hajar al-Haythami narrated this narration in his Majmu' al-Zawaid. I used to think it was Majmu' al-Zawaid. I guess it's Majmu' al-Zawaid. I need to look it up. In his Majmu' al-Zawaid, famous book, he narrated it in Majmu' al-Zawaid and stated that Abu Ya'la narrated this and his narrators are all authentic. That's what Ibn Hajar al-Haythami said. Not Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. That's another Ibn Hajar. This is Ibn Hajar al-Haythami. And he, in his book Majmu' al-Zawaid, he narrated that narration and he stated that Abu Ya'la narrated this. Abu Ya'la, I believe, was one of the tabi'een. If not, he was just a scholar of narrations, if I'm not mistaken. But Abu Ya'la narrated this and his narrators are all authentic. It is evidently clear that the use of interpretation in the Quran is permissible as long as such interpretations are in conformity with the language, have its proofs from other verses of the Quran, narrations, pre-Islamic Arabic poetry, and the like. Again, it's permissible as long as such interpretations are in conformity with the language, meaning the Arabic language, because it's in Arabic, so we have to go by the language, the Arabic language. That's why. Not because it's a superior language or anything like that. No, because that's the language we're dealing with. So, as long as it's in conformity with the language, have its proof, as long as those interpretations, as long as those interpretations are in conformity with the language, have its proofs from. It is evidently clear that the use of interpretation in the Quran is permissible as long as such interpretations are in conformity with the language, have its proofs from other verses of the Quran, hadith narrations, pre-Islamic Arabic poetry, and the like. If any of you is saying, why do we take from pre-Islamic Arabic poetry? That's from before Islam. It shouldn't count. If you go to the books of tafsir, of interpretation of the Quran, how many times do the scholars of those interpretations, the exegetes, books of interpretation of the Quran, commentary of the Quran, exegesis of the Quran, those books, they use Arabic poetry in order to justify the meanings of verses. Not because they praise those poets or praise their religions, no, but because The language they were using was the language that the Quran was revealed in. That is why. Got it? So, yes. Arabic poetry and the like. The interpretation is not at variance with clear, decisive verses of the Quran. So it cannot differ from the clear, decisive verses of the Quran. And that these interpretations are not used to cause corruption in the Muslim community. The absolute prohibition of the use of interpretation has no textual basis. There is no textual basis to justify that there is no justification for interpretation of the Quran. So those Salafis who say that you cannot interpret, if I'm not mistaken, that's what they believe. Tell them, where's your dalil? That's what they ask all the time, right? Well, ask them back. Say, where is your dalil? Where is your evidence? Where is your proof? Show me the proof. They keep saying that. We just brought them dalil here. Authentic. But they play double standards. Maybe next time if I wear a picnic blanket on my head, people will think, oh, he's a scholar. We must listen to him. By the way, the early Muslims, one of the few praised forms of dress in Islam, because Islam never said you have to dress a certain way. By the way, there is no certain dress. You can wear the sweater or baseball hat or whatever as long as it's modest. But one of the narrations, I don't know what the Zaydis say, it might be the same. Not one of the narrations, there are many narrations. If they're authentic or not, I don't know. But one of those praised aspects or pieces of attire, clothing, that is praised to wear is the turban. That's one of the what is mentioned in narrations. I'm not saying you go and you can if you want, that's up to you. But the turban is the way that is in accordance with the related narrations. The Salafis, funnily, there's no such word, but in a funny way, the Salafis say, oh, this is a cultural thing. It's cultural. It has nothing to do. Yet all those who are their disciples, they wear a picnic blanket. Shimagh, it's called shimagh. Some people call it shimagh, some people call it hatta, some people call it kufiya, some people call it kafiya, some people call it ghutra, whatever you call it. Some people call it picnic blanket, whatever you call it. The narrations that have been related, whether they're authentic or not, mention a turban. And everyone agrees, including the Salafis, that the Prophet wore a turban. Angels, I think, came, and when they came to fight, they wore, I think, yellow or red turbans. There were turbans. Turbans are mentioned. But besides turbans, maybe other kinds of clothing too. I don't have any issue with the turban. I believe that a person dresses wherever he is, and the place and the time, and as long as it's modest. This is what people will say generally. As long as it's modest clothing, it's not immodest, there's nothing wrong with wearing it. And those long white, the thiyab, the thobe, some people call it jalabiya, some people call it dishdasha. The thobe, this was not, you can wear it, it covers the whole body, but it was not worn in the time of the Prophet. They used to dress similar to how the Yemenis dress in Yemen, and how the Afar dress in Eritrea and Djibouti and Ethiopia, and how the Somalis dress. They used to dress like that. The way a lot of people with a waistcloth. They call it izar. Some people call it ma'waz. Some people call it futa. Waistcloth, izar. That was the way that they wear it in South Asia, sarong. In Indonesia, they call it sarong. Some people say surang, I believe. Sarong. In the Indian subcontinent, they call it, how can I forget? I haven't forgotten. They call it lungi. So that's what many people used to wear. I don't know about all of them, but they used to wear that. Cloaks were worn as well. Cloaks, like, like a jacket looking kind of, the Prophet, I believe, wore cloaks. But they were not dressed the way the modern so-called Saudis dress. There is no such place as Saudi Arabia. There's no such place. This is a nation state that was just formed, Saudi Arabia. There's such thing as Arabia, but no such thing as Saudi Arabia. No such thing. Made up place, imaginary, fairy tale. Once upon a time. There were no kings, none of that stuff. Anyway, so the absolute prohibition of the use of interpretation has no textual basis. Many of these same people who forbid interpretation are nonetheless forced to use interpretation when confronted with seemingly conflicting verses. Just like what happened between At-Tabari and Maymun. If you go to either the last or the first part of the series of the discussions which deal with interpretation. Okay, so next time we're going to move to another aspect of what Imam al-Hadi said. So we've completed the interpretation section or part of this book. Beautiful section indeed. We've learned about interpretation, and is it allowed? Absolutely, yes, it is. Beautiful. Interpretation is beautiful. It helps the Quran be more comprehensible. Someone once mentioned, may God forgive this person. Someone said, the Quran is not that comprehensive, I think is what he said, or comprehensible, which is not true. It is comprehensible, maybe not to you specifically, but it's comprehensible when you go and seek answers as to what does this verse mean? What does this verse mean? Either you ask someone or you go read, or then it will be comprehensible. This is the book of God which has descended upon mankind and the jinn kind for us to learn from. It's for us to learn from. This is the word of God. Don't you understand? This is what we have from God, from our Creator, so that we can understand so that we can connect to Him, worship Him, and live on this planet, in this if you want to call it a dimension, in this place before we die. We're all going to die someday. 1 minute a person is blinking and looking at you. After 1 hour he could pass away. Everything we do in this religion is supposed to make sense. Everything is supposed to make sense. Meaning we're supposed to do it with purpose. There's a purpose behind it. It's not just, there's supposed to be an explanation behind it. Why we pray 2 times, 4 times, there is no explanation, direct explanation for that. What we do know is that it's a form of prayer. We know that. That's another topic for another time, maybe another series. However, everything we do in this religion, we do with purpose. That's what makes a Muslim a strong Muslim. That's what makes a submitter to God a strong submitter to God. Is worshiping with purpose. If you worship without purpose, you need to seek the purpose. If you choose not to and you say, I'm not going to follow anything, then you're being stupid. Because you're not even at least giving it a chance. You're not going and researching and going and doing your homework. Just a little bit of homework. Not the burdens that these schools put upon people. No, just a small bit of homework. Read 1 page. Read. Knowledge precedes worship. Without knowing how to pray, how will you pray? Without knowing how to read, how will you read the Quran? How will we read this book? How will we understand? Without knowing how to speak, how will you communicate? Without understanding a language, how will you understand? So it precedes worship. Lastly, I want to say that beautiful bird just sitting, anyway. And now another bird came. So what happens is, subhanAllah, glory be to God. there's something called the gut, and I haven't done my research, but the gut, because in Islam we go by the heart. There's something called the heart, of course. The heart is involved, but there's also the brain. When we talk about the gut feeling, I just spoke about. I was speaking about this today. I'm not the one who mentioned it in the conversation, to be fair, but you know how there's a gut feeling. Your gut, according to science and according to how things are, your gut is connected to your brain. So gut health reflects mental health. So when you get that gut feeling, that you have a good feeling about something, or it's connected to your brain. Why am I mentioning this? Because when you do, for me, and perhaps for others who follow this creed, when you do everything falls into place. Everything falls into place. The one who's an Ash'ari, who follows another creed, let's say the Ash'ari creed, Ash'ari, Ash'ari creed, but doesn't know about our creed, may believe that he's on the right path because he's gotten to a certain level where he believes that God doesn't exist, he exists without a place. They accept interpretation. They don't believe God has a body, he exists without a place. So he's on that path. He believes everything falls into place. Once you reach this school, it's like you've reached the top. That's it. There's no better way, because everything's explained. There's no explanation that can counter it. Yet we find in this, we'll see further later on, how it counters the Ash'ari and other schools, how it responds to them. We responded to the corporealists, to the Salafis so far, and also people of Tafweed. And but we'll see how we refute others as well, using evidence. That which agrees with the mind, which agrees with the gut, and which agrees with the heart. In Surah An-Nahl, I believe it mentions that do they not have hearts that think? Hearts that think, that understand, perhaps, that understand. One might interpret it as hearts that reason. I think it's in Surah An-Nahl. Hearts that reason, hearts that understand. Your heart is involved in this thinking process. They're all working to brain, heart, gut, if you want to add that, but it's brain and heart, mind and heart. So things make sense. This is the purpose of life. This is just how it is. In any case, so next time we'll discuss, I believe, the celestial chair, which is the kursi. I believe that's what we talk about next. I believe. Anyways, until then, and at that time, and after that time, keep safe, take care. Thanks for joining. It was good to be with you again, and we will have, God willing, other discussions using this book. Go get this book. This is how it looks. Okay. I will include the title in the bio. It's The Establishment of Clear Exposition, a commentary on Al-Hadi's The Fundamentals of the Religion, published by the Imam Rassi Society. Go and get it. Online. That's where you can find it, unless you find it somewhere else. I don't think you can. It's online. In any case, get that book, study it, learn it. And that's all I have to say. I can't wait to see you next time. Keep safe. Thanks for watching, and peace be with you.